It is my privilege to introduce our next speaker, a Cutco alum who I had the privilege of actually doing a Cutco demo for his parents when I first moved to our town in Deerfield on a service call because I wanted to meet people in the community. Colton Horn started with our company back in 2017 after graduating from high school here locally. At the time, he was just going to be going into his freshman year of college at Northwestern University. Colton had a $10,000 fast start and had a $19,000 first summer. And it was right after this event, SC2, where Colton and I took a walk that I'll actually remember forever around our building. We did a couple different laps. And I talked to him about being a branch manager. And he asked me such an open and honest question. He said, well, what really is a branch manager? What does it mean? And I was like, oh, wow, that's a great question. I should probably explain that to you. And long story short, Colton ended up being the branch manager in the town in which he goes to school or went to school at Evanston and established what was now affectionately known as the Evanston Empire. That first summer in 2018, the Evanston team finished the #3 branch office in the United States of America, #1 in the Central region. And he came back in 2019 to go after it like there's no tomorrow, so to speak. And the Evanston team finishes the #1 Silver Cup branch office in the United States of America, eclipsing over $500,000 in sales, setting a Central region all-time record. Colton earned trips while he was with Cutco to the Cayman Islands, Las Vegas, Puerto Vallarta, and of course, Paris. He has been featured on our the Changing Lives Selling Knives podcast a couple different times with Dan Cassetta twice. His second episode aired this past week. He developed many prestigious people in Cutco, including Sam Posner, who was #4 in the country, our very own Sophie Goodman, who's currently our pilot sales manager, and Robert Wright, who is currently the branch manager in the Evanston office. Since graduating from Northwestern this past year, by the way, his major was in philosophy, and I believe his minor was in econ. Colton, I believe that's correct. He joined the Founder Institute, which is the world's largest pre-seed startup accelerator in January of 2020. He has since also with his father founded Brain Fuel, which is a cerebral beverage with his dad back in March of this last year in 2020. They launched online in December of 2020. Brain Fuel, if you're not familiar with it, you should know it very well. It quickly became the drink of choice for people, including poker legends, an NBA star, many college students, and many vector leaders in our vector community. What's really exciting is Brain Fuel is going to be at over 3,000 CVS stores this upcoming September. Colton, it's great to see you live. I saw your parents when I took a small break at lunch a week or so ago, and it was great to see them in the park and catching up with them, and it's always a pleasure to see them. And Colton, I'm so excited for you to be able to share with our Central region what Vector did for you and a place for growth. So Mr. Horn, great to see you. The floor is yours, good sir.
Wow. Thank you, Danny. It's great to see you. Can you guys hear me? Sweet. And Central Region, it's great to be back. What a tremendous welcome here in the chat. If I'm ever having a bad day, I just got to pop into one of these meetings and it'll get me back up. But seriously, it's a thrill to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me to come back and give this message. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, the topic of my message is a place for growth, and that's really what Vector has been for me. When I think about who I was as a person when I first started with Vector, and where I am and who I am today, it's a lot has changed, and a lot of that has to do with my time here and the people that I've met here. So I'm excited for this, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go. Screen share check. Working? Okay. So usually I'll start a message with some kind of disclaimer, typically something along the lines of, I'm not trying to give advice, but rather just my perspective, and I encourage you to consider what resonates with you and what might not, and apply accordingly to your life. This message is not intended to be an education on things you already know, because that's what it is. These are things that you know, and that you've heard and that you've probably talked about with your team and your manager. But rather it's really my goal is to serve as an affirmation that everything you're putting in to your time at Vector is a worthwhile pursuit because of how you can grow because of that. So hope this goes well. I'm going to start off with some pictures because, first of all, a lot of friendly faces on this call that I do know, which is awesome. It's great to see all you guys. But for anybody that I don't know, I'm a real person with thoughts and feelings. So pictures are kind of a fun way to get to know people. I didn't choose any pictures from my first summer because it probably would have been embarrassing if I could find any. I was very much a recent high school grad. Like I acted very much like a high school kid when I started. And I showed up to my first conference, SC1, in a pink polo and khaki shorts. And that was pretty consistent with my entire first summer behavior. I think I went to like 1 or 2 team meetings, but coming to this conference, SC2, was really a game changer for me. By the way, I wore pink a lot during my time with Cutco, which you'll see in some of these pictures. Still my favorite color. So this first picture is when I opened up our first office in Evanston. So this is literally in the office space. It was 150 square feet, which was awesome. It could fit maybe 5 people in it, but we did have access to a really cool common area. And you can see in my facial expression just how excited I was. And you can also see that I had no idea what was coming. Like I just seemed very obliviously happy in this photo. Fortunately, I was able to surround myself quickly with some great people and allies. The 3 people with me in this picture, Jake Selps, Morgan Kaloran, and Danny Vornov, were our first 3 assistant managers in Evanston Empire. Collectively, they had sold about a cutting board worth of Cutco ever by the time they started as AMs. But the purpose of making them AMs is that I had high levels of trust in them. I knew them all personally, and I had a very strong belief that they could be successful. And they proved that to be true. And you can see how much cooler they made me from picture 1 to picture 2. I have a lot more confidence or drip, as they say. So I realize if you can surround yourself with good people, then you'll generally have a higher likelihood of being successful. And so here we went out. This was for the second summer, and you can tell we had a much different mindset of recruiting. It was let's bring in all of the awesome people that we know. And so we built a great team of friends and a really amazing culture exemplified in this great night of miniature golf at Parking. And you can see what happens when you build a great team is good things happen. And this is when we won the Silver Cup after the 2019 summer, which was the culmination of my career in Vector. And from there, I've been able to leap into my next chapter, which is my venture with my father called Brain Fuel that Danny mentioned in the intro, which we'll, I'm sure, talk about more. But the quick disclaimer is that these bottles in that photo are Brain Fuel 1.0. Brain Fuel 2.0 is brand new this week, which is really cool. So now I've got the energy and focus to keep going. So what I have in the next couple slides here is a breakdown of what I've learned and how I've grown in Vector and how it applies to my life today. And again, I hope that some things resonate with you. It's a lot of text on each slide. So instead of taking frivolous notes throughout, I'd encourage you rather to just screenshot at the end of each slide if you want to keep any. And then also, if you have questions, you could drop them in the chat, and I'll probably have some time at the end to go back and check it out. So 3 slides here: skills, behaviors, and mindset of things that I've picked up from my 3 summers that I spent with Vector. So the first skill is communication. And again, these are all things that you guys have talked about and you know about. So I'm just going to share my perspective on how I learned communication skills in Vector personally. Is I learned how to effectively convey an intended message to all kinds of audiences. So that includes one-on-one communication with reps, with peers, with customers, adults, with mentors and managers, how to have tough conversations, how to have easygoing surface level conversations, how to meet new people, how to lead a team meeting, how to speak at a conference like this. These were things that I didn't necessarily know how or feel comfortable doing before I started with Vector. Next is time maximization, which I think is just a better version of time management. And it's really about understanding we all have the same amount of time in a day, and being in control of how we use our time. And that's something that I never thought about before Vector. And I think when I first started in training and looking at my fast start schedule, I had an understanding of this. The schedule is blank, open, and we get to decide how we fill it. And at that point, maybe it was like demos and phoning, but now it's like my entire life is slotted intentionally by time. And I've become proficient in day-to-day time maximization, less so in weekly, monthly, yearly planning. And that's something that I'm working towards. But I was really able to become much stronger in how I use my time through working with Vector. Goal setting. I think people discount goal setting and think about goal achievement a lot, which is great, but you have to have a goal set in order to achieve it. So there's different kinds of goals. There's really big goals, and there's really small goals that make up the big goals. And I think that everything that we ever did in Vector, whether it was my fast start, a push, a summer campaign, recruiting goals, they all, you can break them all down from what is the ultimate end game here, what is the purpose of what I'm trying to do or change, and what are the mini goals that build up to it, that I can actually focus on one by one. Critical thinking skills. This is something that is very relevant now with our team at Brainfield too. It's not just my own creativity, but it's the creativity of the people around us. How can I maximize that, but also combine it with analytical thinking, rational thinking, to be able to decide a course of action based on the creativity? So, for example, I mentioned Jake at the beginning, who is my partner with Vector, my partner with Brainfuel, amazing idea guy. So Jake has tons of ideas. My dad also is a very creative scientist and inventor, so many great ideas of new products and new product lines. How can I bring out creativity in people around me, but then apply rational thinking processes to be able to determine what do we act on, what do we table for later? Strategic planning. Anytime we're breaking down something in the Vector business, again, whether it's a 10-day or a 21-day push or a summer, how can we establish what are the key objectives that are going to make that a success? What are the key actions that we actually take to make the objectives come to fruition? And then what are the trackers or measures of progress? So, one example of a tracker would be money or sales or CPO. Most times CPO is not the end game. Most of the time CPO is a measurement tool that we have to be able to determine how well are we moving along our path to our end game. I've definitely developed execution skills, and this is something I think I was very much lacking prior to Vector, is I would start a lot of things and not finish them. And since then, and it wasn't night and day, it's like over time, I've learned how to actually use my whole brain to funnel out distractions and actually focus entirely on the task at hand until it's done, and then move into the next one. And I've just found that life is a lot more fulfilling that way when we finish the things that we start. Cognitive flexibility. I love this term. It was actually there was a really cool article recently, I think it was maybe Harvard Business Review, that said cognitive flexibility is a more important tool than IQ to determine intelligence now. Basically, it means how to adapt, how well can you adapt your behavior or thinking in response to your environment, which can mean all sorts of things. In the Vector world, things are thrown at you, and you have to figure out how to respond, whether you're on a demo and Mrs. Jones is giving you information about her cooking situation, her life situation, whether you're a manager and you're working with reps. All the time things are changing around us, and we have to figure out how to adapt. With Brainfuel, we did a trial with 100 subjects on how does the drink impact cognitive flexibility. And the way that we tested it was through a really fun game that many of you have probably played at some point, maybe when you were a kid. The words, like the letters that spell blue, red, yellow, green, etc., are spelled in different colors. And it's like, how quickly can you identify what is the word saying? And it gets really hard because if the color is blue, but it's spelled RED, and what do you answer? So that was kind of cool that we tested that for brain fuel, ended up showing an increase in cognitive flexibility. Another skill is avid learning. I think that like going through formal education really restricts learning to material that is summoned for you, which is not always a bad thing. Like a lot of times that material could be really valuable, but in the vector world, in my time in vector and in college too, like I was able to actually broaden what I wanted to learn about because there was such a wide variety of people in vector that had knowledge about so many different things about life. And for me, that sort of unlocked a whole new sphere of how I wanted to feed my mind, what I wanted to read and listen to and learn about and do and experience that was a lot deeper than anything I had thought before vector. Also, networking is a very obvious skill to take away from vector for sure. I mean, even at the rep level, when you're getting referrals from demos, I would encourage you to think about that as networking rather than sales, because it's amazing how that can benefit you. So to me, I love networking, not because it has like inherent value or gain in knowing more people, although maybe it does, but more so my time in vector encouraged me to have more curiosity in other people. Like I want to know others. Like I want to know how other people think and what they do and what makes them tick. And knowing how to look for those things in people is what allowed us to be successful as an office, and also has allowed me to just enhance the quality of my life and relationships, and make friends. Leadership skills for sure, and there's so many different ways to break down leadership skills, but like one would be, and the reason I picked these three keywords is they were defining characteristics of our Evanston Empire and also of our Brain Fuel team, is high levels of trust, massive trust going all the way around. I really trusted our assistant managers at a very, very high level. We entrusted the AMs with a lot of responsibility, and we gave them a lot of credit. They trusted me that I was going to go to bat for them and work hard every single day. And then that trust really carried over to AM and rep and back all the way around. So there was a high level of trust throughout the organization. We encouraged everybody to be authentic. And, that's one of the most important things in any group of people is be your authentic self, because it creates an authentic team culture. And then fulfillment, like applying meaning to what you're doing so that the whole collective understands that it's not just about a static goal, like CPO or numbers or money, but rather like there's a much deeper meaning of what we're doing and what we're changing, that can add a lot of fulfillment to what you're doing. Entrepreneurship skills. Like I think growing up, I maybe wanted to be an entrepreneur, whether I really knew it or not, but Vector really allowed me to become an entrepreneur, and it's allowing you to become an entrepreneur now. Even if you're a sales rep, you are an entrepreneur, and especially if you are a branch or a district manager. One of the amazing things about Vector is I like to call it intrapreneurship, where it's like you can have your own organization within an organization, and your organization can have a unique culture and like way that you operate that's independent but related to Vector as a whole company, which is really an amazing thing. There's also a built-in support system in Vector, and they give you financial support to open up your own office. So Vector definitely encouraged me and gave me my start in entrepreneurship. And then the quote here is sort of a paraphrasing from Gary Vaynerchuk, but it's love the game more than what the game gives you. And I really think that that's true. Like when I was with Vector, even as a sales rep with just selling Cutco was a lot of fun. Like I just really enjoyed making calls, and I really enjoyed doing demos, but then especially branching. I really just loved building the team, and I loved experiencing like watching our reps be successful. I loved that more than I loved, anything I got from the experience tangibly. And it's the same thing now, by the way. Like, I love what we're building at Brain Fuel more than, I mean, we're not, more than like the clout that comes with it. Like, I actually just love waking up and doing it every day. And then lastly, here are skills that really are it's more of a motto, skill, speed, and versatility. If there's like two characteristics that I think are really important for a team, there's many more, but being able to do things very quickly and change a lot on the go will enable you to do more, learn more, and adapt more, and ultimately be successful. So behaviors, my time in Vector really unlocked a lot of curiosity, encouraged me to ask questions. And we talk a lot about the importance of asking good questions, but curiosity is a necessary precursor to being able to ask questions. You have to be curious about things. And having that kind of instilled in your nature will give you more answers to understand the world around you, whether that's like in the business or in life. And when you have a better understanding of situations and your environment, you can solve problems that you didn't even know existed. Like, if you're asking questions to Mrs. Jones, and you're asking really creative questions because you're genuinely curious about her, you're going to get answers to things that she wouldn't have otherwise told you. And then all of a sudden you're able to hit pain points or hot buttons and solve problems that you didn't know existed. And when you unlock that, I think that it's a lot more fun. Definitely, I did not have a lot of attention to detail when I was younger. And for whatever reason, like, the process of doing a demo, I think, teaches you a lot about how to notice things. And that ultimately scales up to, like, if you're running an organization, you start to pick up on how small tells play into the bigger scheme of what's going on. And I just think that's really valuable. Decisiveness, for sure. Like, I think probably a lot of people are like this, but like, I used to be kind of indecisive. And when you're branching, for example, you have to be able to make decisions because you're the one that's going to make it, or the decision's not going to be made. When are you scheduling your meetings? Like, you have to be able to make decisions quickly and confidently, even if you're not totally sure, because most of the time you're not going to be totally sure about anything that you're doing in life, at least in my experience. Probably most people would agree. Like, even if you don't know what's coming, you have to be able to move confidently and swiftly and figure it out as you go if you want to be successful. Fearlessness, like, I think that I used to kind of discount fearlessness because I felt like the more important thing was courage to overcome fears, since everybody has fears of something. But as I've thought about it more, like, I truly do think that my time with Vector encouraged me to be fearless, because there's no reason or point of caring about the possibility of failing or the possibility of being told no. Or a big one is, like, there's no point of caring about FOMO. There's no point in caring about not being good enough or falling short. Like, there's no benefit of being paralyzed by fear in that way. And so I've tried to learn to just kind of not let fear even seep into my mind and just conquer fear with urgency. Because if I know that I'm stressed or afraid of something that's like hanging over my head, then taking urgent action is going to be the best possible way to quell that fear. Tenacity, like, just even if, on the rep level, when you're phoning and doing demos, it's like the harder that you go for the longer amount of time is directly correlated with how successful you'll be. There's no question about it. Like, the number one determinant of success at any level of anything in life probably is like how much you give, or how much you care, or how much you try. And I think that Vector's a really great, like, kind of sandbox to allow you to discover, like, for you, what does it mean to be tenacious? What does it mean to work hard? What does it look like to be at peak performance? And it's a question that Mike asks a lot. Like, when was a time when you were successful at something, and what did that feel like? What were you doing? What was your habits like? What is maximum capacity for you? Maybe it's diet, nutrition, and sleep. Maybe it's what you're reading, who you're talking to, where you're living, So how can you get to peak performance? Charisma, like, in order to get people to rally around a vision, I believe it's valuable to be quote unquote charismatic, but there's a misconception about having charisma or having like a magnetic personality, in that a lot of people think it comes from energy. And I don't think it necessarily comes from energy. I think it comes from clarity of like how clearly does this person know what they want, and how much belief do they have in that vision that extends beyond just themselves, right? It's like people want to be a part of a train that's going somewhere more than they want to attach to a particular person because they're energetic. Commitment is a huge one that, similar to execution on the last slide, I don't think I really had this prior to Vector at all, but being able to see things through to completion in order to succeed at Vector is a necessity, because it's what separates good from great. There's a lot of good reps that have good starts. There's a lot of good reps that have good pushes. There's not a lot of reps that crush August. Not a lot of managers that really crush it and dive in and see it through to completion. And like, that's to me how you can separate yourself as being serious about your growth and your success, is how strong do you finish? Because most people will quit. It's an amazing thing. It's not just a Vector. It's just like in life. I think most people quit what they start. An example would be like, I'm doing 75 harder right now, which a lot of you guys probably have seen. It's like, health challenge. Actually a mental toughness challenge about consistently like eating good, working out twice a day, no drugs or alcohol, reading a book every day, like all of these things. And it's not like hard to do in a day, but it's hard to do it consistently for 75 days. And I did it with 5 other people, and 4 of them quit pretty quickly. And it's, to me, it's just symbolic of like how most things happen. Most people will drop off. And so one of the best things you can do to kind of booby trap yourself for success is just to keep showing up. Empathy is really important. And this is another thing that I just really sucked at until I started in Vector. And I think like being a rep made me more empathetic to listen to customers, but more so as a manager, but being able to understand reps and being able to understand my peers really made me a better listener. And like now I actually think I'm a strong listener when I used to be a really bad listener. And that's night and day because of my experience with Vector. When you listen to people, you can connect with them on much deeper levels. And you can really understand their point of view. Being a self-starter is possibly the most important characteristic to determine how successful somebody's going to be in Vector. How much action can they take without being prompted? Because if you think about the nature of your office right now, there's one manager and maybe a couple AMs, and there's a lot of reps, and it's not a one-to-one management, right? And that's the same way that like all jobs are in society. It's like the people that are successful, that whether it's climbing the corporate ladder or whether it's being successful in a startup, it's, you have to be able to take action without being prompted to. And it's definitely the number one thing that I'm looking for if I'm hiring, whether I was recruiting college students that I knew to become sales reps on our branch, or whether I was building our team with Brain Fuel now. And that's true at like my age level for people that are on our team. It's also true for people that are 2-3 times my age. I just think it's a personality trait that bodes really well in a startup organization, or probably in any company culture. I learned a lot of self-awareness in my time with Vector. And that's knowing your strengths and weaknesses and doubling down on your strengths and embracing your weaknesses rather than just trying to fix and improve them. Like I know that I didn't know anything about beverages, for example, when I started Brain Fuel. So instead of like trying to pretend like I did and fake it till I make it, I instead actually like brought in people around me that knew beverage in and out, so that I could attach myself to them and learn really quickly. It's the same thing no matter what you're doing. Self-mastery, hold yourself to your own standards, your own benchmarks. That's something that I learned while I was at Vectors. Like there's no value in comparing yourself to others. Like if you compete with other people, and I'll just kind of zoom through this and like pull them all up at once. But if you compete with other people, you could be better than them. But if you compete with yourself, that's how you can be the best that you can be. So I skipped ahead a few because I'm sort of short on time, but Jake always says, be prepared to build the plane as you fly it. Like, figure things out as you go. When I opened our first branch, I had no idea what branching was or what we were doing. But if we worked really hard, we could figure it out as we were going. And that's the definition of entrepreneurship in a lot of ways. Yeah, I mean, having the mindset of like, when you are at your best, you're unstoppable. Have an abundant mindset. All of the answers are out there if you can ask the right questions. When you're deeply inspired, motivation to act is very, very personal. You don't need to be swayed by incentives. And I experienced that as a manager. Like, giving incentives to reps didn't make them do more demos. Like, instilling fulfillment in what they were doing got them to do more demos. It's probably the same thing for you. Like, you're motivated by things that inspire you, not by things that are given to you. And that relates to this point of really earn what you want rather than take what's given. And if then you have options and control over your direction in life. And then finally, last point, forge your own path, live life on your terms, inspire others to do the same. That was our mission for our second summer branching. It's still my mission now. And that's like the one thing I would hope to carry on to you listening to this message. Is like, really do your own thing. Not what society tells you to do, or your parents or your managers. Like, really do what makes you happy. And I trust that you'll be successful and fulfilled by doing that and trusting yourself. So final slide here, I won't go through them, but just to kind of show you how much Vector continues to impact me and where we're at. Our team from Brain Fuel, many of them came from Vector. Our early support system came from Vector. Our biggest brand partner, Phil Hellmuth, came from a connection through Vector. Being credible and like me as the leader of our team, or as a leader of our team, came from my experience and reputation with Vector. The reason I was able to go abroad by myself without knowing anybody, to join Founder Institute without knowing anybody, to start Brain Fuel, is because I had the confidence instilled in me from my time with Vector. A lot of my closest friends and mentors are from Vector. There's a great reputation if you have Vector on your resume, and if you really succeeded there, that people in the business world at least really respect, from what I've noticed. And just the way that I am, like the way that I think, and this is true for all of you guys who have been with Vector for a while, like, it's just deeply instilled in who I am. My philosophy about life, the way that I approach every single day, has been changed because of my time with Vector. And for that, I'm really grateful. And I hope to continue to do everything that I can to reflect positively on Vector and make the Vector community proud, because it's a big part of who I am. So that is my last slide. Hope you guys enjoyed the message, and wish you all nothing but success, fulfillment, happiness as you continue upward on your Vector journey. Thank you.